Well, hello there. Welcome back to another episode. Today we are going to be carrying on with our dungeon walls. Now, in the last episode, I showed you how to paint this simple little piece using black, and I've done a grey dry brush over the top. Now, today we're going to carry on, and we're going to do a whole one room, as we've got a simple little room here with 6 tiles, 6 large tiles. These are 4x4 tiles over 6. We have 3 2-inch wall tiles, a half-inch connecting pieces for the ends there, and I find it's much easier to actually paint these dungeons while the actual building is separate. So make your walls up like so, and just paint them up as they are, and then you can stick them on later, and they just clip on anyway, so you can take them apart as many times as you wish. But it's just an easier way to get these dungeons painted. Now, the paints we use today are the same as last week. We have the large tub of acrylic paint there, but we're also using my Reaper paints today as well. So we've got some pure white by MSB paints by Reaper Miniatures, we have some turf green, and we have some brown ink wash. So let's make a start. Now, I've already gone over the tiles once more. So what I did here is, what we're just adding a little bit of the pure white to our grey, and I've gone and dry brushed just over the walls a little bit more to just give them a little highlight. What we're doing is we're edging the walls along here and here and around all the edges there, just to make them a little bit brighter. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding a little ink wash, and these little techniques are just a little simple way to add a little bit more depth and colour to your dungeon. So let's get on and start adding that brown ink wash. For the brown ink wash, we're just using a small little brush here, and what you do is just random tiles just go over with the ink wash. This is quite a dark ink wash, but what you just want to do is just go over each little tile. You're looking for about maybe 5 or 6 tiles on each of your tiles. So each 2-inch tile you could do with maybe 4 to 6. Call it 4 to 6. I will go for 5. So we're just painting 5 little tiles in random areas on these tiles, like so. Very simple. And once that's dry, it actually blends in nicely with the wall, and it looks very, very nice. Okay, so again on the next tile, just add in random little ink washes to a few of the tiles here and there, and it just kind of breaks up the wall. You can actually use black ink wash. It doesn't matter what colours you use. You could use red, depending on what colour bricks you wanted. And of course, this method works with any building. It doesn't have to be just for this dungeons. You can use them with Dwarven Forge. You can use them with Forge World. You can use them with Tabletop World. Tabletop World. This is a very, very good way to paint your Tabletop World miniatures. So as you can see, I've just added a few little bricks. I don't want to overdo it because I don't want to make it look too much. So you're looking, I got 5 bricks on each 2-inch tile there. Now I'm going to do this around the rest of the actual building, and of course you don't have to do this for every single building. You can keep your tiles all grey if you wanted to. This is just a way to add an extra little bit of colour and variation to your dungeons. All our ink wash has been added now, and it's already looking absolutely fantastic. I'm really, really happy how these dungeons are starting to come out. Now, what we need to do now is we need to make it even more dungeon-esque, and that means we need it kind of, in some rooms we need it slimy, we need it with all sorts of mold, and just making it gooey and cold and nasty for your deepest, darkest dungeons. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to add some turf green. But before we add the turf green, I need to say an important thing, and that is when you paint the turf green, if you are going to be taking all the dungeons apart, if you are going to seal the dungeons, then it's not an issue. But if you are not going to seal your dungeons and you want to use them for making different types of variations, and you're going to take them apart, then it's very, very important that you don't paint the bases. What we're doing, let me show you here. What we need to do is we need to add green to these walls. Now, if you're going to actually keep these buildings permanently fixtured, then you'd add green going up the sides of the walls, and along the bottom and up the sides. Now, we don't do that for these, and the reason being is if you're going to take these apart, like so, and put them into a different variation, what will happen is you'll end up with green marks on your dungeons in your next dungeon. So it's really important to make your mind up whether you're going to keep these permanently fixed like so or not. If you're not going to fix these dungeons, then you can actually go and paint all the green everywhere. But I'm going to show you how to paint the green on these dungeons if you are going to actually change the dungeon layout. It may sound confusing, but you'll understand if you make the mistake like I did in the past. So these dungeons are going to stay the same here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm using some lovely turf green, and we're going to dry brush the turf green to the bottom of the dungeons, and I'll explain to you as we go along. Now, what we're going to do to add that mold effect is we're just going to go along the bottom of our dungeons. Now, we want to keep them exactly the same on each tile. So every single dungeon tile we do, we want to keep this green to about half an inch up. And the reason why I'm saying that is because then you can take this dungeon apart and you can interlock it to any of your other dungeons. So we're making sure that we are just keeping the green half an inch to the top of the tile like so, and it looks absolutely beautiful once it's on. And it's the same on the inside. The inside, we've got this gap here, so we're just going along the bottom again about half an inch, and we're just dry brushing a nice little layer of green along the bottom of the dungeon. And this is perfect. We can take this apart and we can put this into any dungeon we want to. And the reason being I'm saying is we can now clip this part of the dungeon together, and if we do this side with the half inch of green, it will blend in nicely. So if you want to actually stick your dungeons together permanently, what I'd be doing is on this corner piece here, if I was keeping this dungeon as it was, I would do a dry brush up the corner, but we're not going to do that because I want to be able to use these dungeons and make different layouts all the time. So if you want to mix and match your dungeons, you want to just keep your green at half inch around every single tile. Don't go up the sides unless you're keeping it as a permanent layout. If that makes sense to you, let me know in the comments. Okay, so what I'll do now is I shall do the rest of the green around the rest of the dungeon, and I'll give you a 360 of how we came on today. Okay, so here's a little 360 of how we got on today, and as you can see, just by adding that green to the actual dungeons, it absolutely brings it totally to life. It's beautiful. I just adding that green to me is just the perfect finishing touch for these dungeons. Again, this is a very simple paint, but it just adds a little bit more to your dungeons. And of course, with the dungeon walls, you can add some white bricks, red bricks, all sorts of different bricks, or you can add different colours, multicolours. I mean, you can do the whole dungeons in reds and blues, it doesn't really matter, but we're just adding some variations on these walls. Now, like I said before, I haven't painted the green in any of the corners of these miniatures. Normally I would paint the greens and probably add a little bit of green to the floor, but because we're making these as modular dungeons. It means we need to make the dungeons so they actually match together whenever I add a tile. So by doing the dungeon in this form where I've just painted along the bottom of the green, it means I can use these dungeon tiles in any variation for any dungeon. Anyway, so I hope you really enjoyed this little episode. Next week we are going to make a start on painting some dungeon doors. So a very simple paint next week, and we'll do some dungeon doors, and then in future episodes we'll start going on to the fire rooms, trap rooms, and all the other very exciting rooms to add to your dungeons. So until next time, take care.